One of the reasons I love the work that I do is that I get to work with authors who have really important stories, and I get to see what they're going through, see their process of excavating these stories, putting them together, and seeing them become this really amazing book that is necessary in the world. So today I'm super excited to introduce you to Nikki Kindred Halverson, who is going to introduce you to her upcoming book.
I'm Amy Hallberg, author, editor, and writing mentor. And these are conversations with real-life creatives on how we find and embody our voices. Because if you want to be a real-life creative, it helps to know what that looks like for you. Welcome to Courageous Wordsmith.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Amy.
You and I have been talking about this book in private for a while now, and I'm really excited that it's starting to get out into the world. So do you want to just talk a little bit about this book and what it is?
Yes. So this book is a memoir about my life with my late husband, Eric. I kind of start at the beginning when we met. We met actually in middle school, and I go up until the point where he was killed by a drunk driver in 2020, and my life was completely derailed. Life as I knew it would never remotely look or feel the same. And the memoir continues and shares about my grieving process. It shares about the physical, the emotional, psychological changes that happened in my life after that, and kind of how I sought to rebuild my life using pieces that were from my old life. You don't start from scratch entirely. So using the pieces of the old life, honoring them in good ways, but also leaving plenty of room for the new to come in.
So when you talk about being a widow, you were really young to be a widow.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 32.
Yeah. You were thinking about starting a family.
Yes.
And you talk about rebuilding your life from the ashes or from the pieces. And I think it's really important to talk about what that literally was in your house, because you two shared a really important passion, which was?
Yes, so historical preservation. It was always more my passion than Eric's, but Eric was my late husband, was a wonderful human being who, anything that made my eyes light up, he was there for it. So he joined me in that, and that led to doing work with a local nonprofit, not just trying to save things in place, but when things were going to be demolished, we would go in and salvage the still useful parts of those old houses to keep them out of the landfill. So we were salvagers.
And you had a very personal experience with that too, right? Like it wasn't just you were salvaging for other people's houses. You had your own house.
Correct. We together bought our folk Victorian house in Iowa in 2014. It's built in 1901, and it wasn't a total fixer-upper, but it needed a lot of work. And over the 6 years we got together in the house, we did nonstop projects. And sadly, around the time he was killed, we were doing like the biggest project we'd done to date, which is rehabilitating our upstairs to remove the apartment that our friends and family had lived in for 6 years, to renovate the home to have a family in it. And he was killed when that project was about halfway done.
So literally you get the visit from the police that nobody wants to get, and you're in a house that is fallen apart. Like, no, it's been torn apart all around you.
Yes, literally, I was dressed in clothes. Eric was going to work that morning to do some overtime to help fund the project. And I was waiting for our carpenter to arrive. I was dressed in clothes I'd like worn the day before, covered in drywall dust, plaster dust, sawdust, other dust, unmentionable things. And I was waiting for my carpenter to come when the cop showed up. My carpenter showed up under 10 minutes later.
So, I mean, when I met you, you had already written a lot. Like, you had already actually written probably, let's say, the first draft of it. And then you and I started working together to shape it into a manuscript. And then from there, now you're in revision. But how do you even start writing about a story that awful? Because here we are in 2025. It's 5 years later, and you have... Well, we'll get to what all you've written, right? But you did a lot of writing. So how did you do that? How did you start that?
Well, that's a great question. So I started that in really like the worst throes of my grief. When I would come home to my house that was torn up and empty, and I work in healthcare. So I go and work with kids and their families all day. And then I would come home to this house at night with just my cat. And it was the worst loneliness I'd ever felt in my life. And writing has always been a passion of mine. And I used to write a lot more than I did for a lot of years. I sadly didn't write a lot of things when Eric and I were together. I was happy and I was busy. And it's often in my periods of loneliness that I do more writing. It took me 3 months to go back to work, but I went back to work. And when I was back living at my house, my parents let me stay with them for 3 months, came back here and I'm like, I need to write about this. I want to, even if it's just for me, even if it's not a book to publish, I love to write. I needed reasons to keep going. I needed something to do with my mind and myself. And
Isn't
so
that interesting? You couldn't even be in the house for 3 months.
Yeah, I couldn't. It was awful.
And I think, just to not to put too fine a point on it, but sometimes when you're writing, the thing that is the most painful, the thing you cannot face, is exactly the thing that you need to write about.
Yeah.
So you wrote stories about your house. You wrote stories about your honeymoon. You wrote poetry. You wrote and wrote and wrote.
I did.
What about that time surprises you the most?
Oh man, that I wrote so much. That I made it. Honestly, just the fact that I lived is a huge surprise to me because I was in so much pain sometimes and so challenged to put myself together in a day that writing anything coherent, I mean, that's amazing to me that I was able to do that because I felt so scattered. I felt like I could just blow away with the slightest breeze or pass away in the night from just the amount of physical pain I was in from the grief. So yeah, my survival is amazing. The fact that I finished my house project is amazing. The fact that it was while working in healthcare in a pandemic, and we had this god-awful storm in August in the midst of it that came and like wrecked 3 of my 4 trees. And
the derecho, which nobody had ever heard of a derecho before, ever. Like, what is a derecho? I don't know, but it just destroyed my house. Like, it destroyed like everything. Yeah.
It was basically it felt like an inland hurricane. So I live in Iowa. Like, I am nowhere near a coast, but you looked outside and you're like, that is what I've seen on cameras about a hurricane. There were gusts, I think, from about 90 to 140 miles per hour registered for over 45 minutes. And so it annihilated the city I lived in. I was at work at the time, and I literally thought I would have no home to go to. And so in the midst of that,
did.
I did. By some miracle, my old house was okay. She had some limbs on her. Nothing went through the roof, and I made it out. But I literally just think of just like scenes of like apocalyptic scenes from 2020 were just regular for me. Like choosing an urn, choosing a gravesite, designing my own gravestone. just a town that didn't look, I grew up and I was raised here, and it didn't look the same, and nothing felt the same. And it was this pandemic, and everyone had a mask on, and it was just like the most trippy of things.
Well, and I think when you talk about that, and you've written about this,
Yeah.
choosing your own gravestone, and yet also choosing to go on with life. So it's almost like there's this division of like, there's sort of like, here's my gravestone, and also here's my life going forward. Because you and Eric, as you said, had been best friends. You weren't even dating, and you get into this in the book. I mean, so you cover it there, but like, you weren't even dating for the longest time. He was just your best friend for years before he ever became your boyfriend and then husband. So it really was losing. I mean, when you write about this, you're writing about years of your life where you were on one track and you were suddenly on a very different track.
Yeah.
And so I think this book does a beautiful job of balancing, on the one hand, all that was lost, but at the same time, you know, you've moved on with your life too. So how has it been writing about the parts where Eric hasn't been there, like moving on past him?
What's a very interesting and surprising thing about my writing process to me is that it was remarkably easy for me to share about what grief felt like and what a mourning felt like of my new life, or like that wrote itself. It needed very little editing. What was hard was writing the pieces where Eric was alive.
Ooh.
And bizarre, not what I expected, but really, you know, in the early stages of editing with you, I realized that I didn't have vignettes. I didn't have anywhere where Eric was alive. And I realized just that was so important to me to show. The world didn't get enough Eric. And I want this book, I want him to be alive somewhere. And so I wanted to do that in this book. And so that was crushing to write those pieces. I mean, my voice is shaking as I'm talking about it. It was crushing to write those pieces, because at the end of them, I was just realizing how beautiful my life was. And then you take your hands away from the keyboard, and it's,
And you were very clear. I didn't even know you until, well, a friend of yours is a friend of mine. We have a common connection. And this person said, hey, my friend Nikki, she's going to look you up when she's done writing some stuff, you know, like she said, you need to meet my friend Nikki. When I met you, you were very clear that you wanted to keep Eric alive. You wanted people to know him through this book. So like you said that was the hard part, but from the beginning, you understood that was your vision for the book too.
Absolutely. And that's where the coaching just came in amazingly. Show him. What did he look like? What did he sound like? And I'm like, oh yeah, now I have to go back in those memories, because it was almost just the hardest to go back in them to put them on a page for someone else. But I'm so glad I did, because it was the best salvaging work I've ever done.
I mean, the funny thing about that is when you talk about salvaging, like you get these things and you're like, okay, now will you put them or whatever? So, you know, you and I went through that whole process. I read through the whole manuscript. There was a lot there. And in fact, I think we've come to the conclusion that you've actually written 3 books worth of content. Is that where we're at this point? 3 books?
Yeah, I'd say it's close to that.
So there's like tons of Eric in there, but it, like, you know, like once you got going, there was a lot to tell.
There was. Yeah. Once I learned how to do it and I got comfortable. The first few were terrible. I mean, and there was always a certain few where they just really impacted me. And I'm like, that's it. That's all I'm writing for the week, because I'm taken out. They took a lot out of me, but like I said, I'm so glad that I did. I achieved that.
Yeah. I mean, and now the book is back with you. I haven't seen it. You and I have been contacting each other back and forth, and you're sort of like, okay, Amy, I'm down to this many words. I'm down to, because like, I was like, that's a lot of words. Like I said, probably 3 books, and we've kind of identified them. But as you're reading your book now, and you've been working with some beta readers, the original friend who pointed you in my direction in the first place, and, you know, like, and some other people, what surprises you as you're reading your own writing now?
Oh, just that I did manage to capture so many things. So even though I've cut a lot of pieces out to put in future books, I'm reading through and I thought, oh, did I make this one little idea I had clear? Did I mention this facet? Did I show it? I'm just amazed by like the wide range of what's in there.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think, I kept talking about The Year of Magical Thinking, which is a great book. I always like to find books like, hey, here's a comparison book for you to be thinking about. I think your experience, tell me where I'm wrong on this, but I think your experience was there really weren't enough books about what it's like when you're a young widow, where your life is perfectly fine and suddenly the person is gone and you're stuck in a house and a life. And in fact, that house took on a life of its own. I don't think you meant for it to become the theme for this book, but it is.
It is, yeah. It definitely is. So, it's amazing that as I was writing, the story unfolded. I wasn't exactly sure how it would unfold. I just kept writing and getting ideas and then liked some, scrapped others. And some I ended up, from the pieces of writing, just taking a nugget and expanding upon it. So it's just the writing process was just really, really interesting to me.
I think it's fascinating how theme, you think that you have to know what it is at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think something has to happen to help people to get over that initial writing stage. In your case, you were like, I have to write or I'm going to die. So I'm going to write. I mean, like, I think that was literally why you started doing it. It was compulsion that you just really needed to be writing.
Yeah.
But the theme doesn't come in until later. And then you start to look for the imagery in it that carries the message for people. And it's like, it's there, but you didn't put it there. It just came in because that's what was there to tell. It's pretty remarkable, really.
It is. It is definitely just like kind of how I've done things with my decorating with my antiques, where I'd always bring one home and Eric would go, where are you going to put that? Well, I've never had a theme per se. I love antiques. I love all of them. I love them from the dawn of time, the most primitive little thing, to like the most high-end Queen Anne piece you can imagine. Like, I'm sitting on a couch built in 1872 right now, and it's next to a radio from 1926, and like, who knows? It's just a melange of stuff. And I guess the cohesive theme for everyone is it's Nikki's house. And they know when they're here that, like, I guess expect the unexpected, eclectic. I'm quite eclectic. And I kind of collected pieces that same way, that realize there is a theme. There is a love of the past and wanting to bring it forward.
And there's a certain image that came forward, and I would love for you to share. Like, it's sort of the central image that carries the whole piece. Like, it almost becomes like a representative of the entire thing. Do you want to talk about that image? Because I don't think that you were even thinking about that when we started.
My staircase?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have two staircases in my old house, and one of them was closed up for almost a century. And Eric and I had always had the plan from when we moved in that we were going to open up these back stairs, like a maid staircase from the kitchen to like the upper rear of the home. And I have, like, in my book, these beautiful memories of starting that project with him, opening up that staircase. And then when he died, they were a disaster, half painted. I had to tear out the horsehair plaster wall around them. It couldn't be repaired. My house was flooded really badly in 2008. So there's just some damage that was beyond what I could, restore. And it became a rehab mission. But that staircase was like the last thing. So, right, the reason for that was because all my helpers had to go up and down those stairs with their big muddy work boots for months and months and months. And in my brain, I'm just like, don't even touch those stairs till they're done and they're gone. And so I didn't even really start on those stairs until like December of 2020, which is when the project was done minus those stairs. So within about 7, 8, 9 months of Eric's death, we had that project finished. I mean, I had help from friends and family, which I do tell in my book, but those stairs were a real beast for me to finish for a variety of reasons. And one of those reasons was that I had wanted to finish that project with Eric, and I knew I was not going to. And, you know, as much as I wanted to have a triumph and just get the thing done, I struggled with it. So I have some pieces where I return to my working on those stairs and the various stages of them. And it took me 3 years to finish them. Like all this stuff in the upstairs that was just like months and months of like professionals. And all I had to do was like clean up and paint backstairs. And it took me 3 years, but I did it. And the book shows me doing it.
And I think, you know, I've hinted at, I have not mentioned, while you were mourning Eric and putting together this house, you also fell in love.
I did. That was not planned at all. So, do you want me to go into it?
I do, because I think it's interesting how it wasn't part of the book. And then it was like, you keep mentioning this boyfriend.
Yeah.
You need to bring him onto the stage, because we as a reader, and I think sometimes we do this, we try to spare the reader, or we're like, oh no, people don't want to know, or whatever. Like we get protective around stuff, and we don't tell things, but it's there. And so you kept sort of like hinting at this boyfriend. And finally I was like, does the boyfriend have a name? Or you might have named him, right? But I was like, you know, like there's this boyfriend, where does he come in? And he does very much in the story. So do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, I was hesitant at first because I wasn't sure about the scope of my book, right? I knew I wanted to write about Eric, and I knew I wanted to share about my house project, but it just became abundantly clear that my boyfriend, Jordan, was so much a part of me finishing my house project and my rebuilding that it'd be really weird not to talk about him. And it was just part of my rebuilding. And I really wanted to be authentic and tell people, you know, it's not a recipe, but like how I did it, what I did, what it looked like for me. So yeah, I needed help at one point in my upstairs project. After Eric died, he'd been kind of the mastermind behind the project. So I had to take it over, which was just like a lot of stress I didn't need. But we'd come down to, before we could move forward and put on my salvaged trim in the back area, I needed to have the floor sanded. And my parents reminded me, hey, you know, my mom worked with this woman whose family and son had floor refinishing businesses back in the day. And I was Facebook friends with the guy. I knew him. I'd gone to high school with him. Like hadn't been close or anything, but knew him through my mom and his mom, and saw him sometimes at high school. I had a very big high school, so not often. But anyway, I messaged him and he was willing to come look at my floors, which was really sweet. And so everything started out just like he's here to do my floors, and he just kept showing up. He saw what a disaster and what a mess things were. And I genuinely believe to this moment that his intent was really just like he wanted to help. Like it was a really big mess. I was a really big mess. I was not fun to be around. I'm confident. No, I was a mess. And so I was a hot mess. So came in, and my God, he came. Oh, he'd been at work 76 hours in 1 week. The man just works a lot. And I needed to re-insulate my attic after we'd had the bats removed from it. And
the bats removed.
Yeah, the crazy bats. Yeah, I had bats in my attic. I had everything. I had every problem, I swear. But he was willing to come on his one night off that entire week and go up in that darn attic to haul up the bales of the batting insulation. So I probably realized then that this guy's a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I'm sorry, you aren't talking bats like flying creatures.
Oh no, bats of insulation. We did have
because
bats.
because you had creatures too.
I did. So there's 2 bats. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't even thinking about
that. But I mean, isn't that just it? Like there's more and there's more. There's the insulation, there's the creatures, there's the flooring, there's the dust and the grime, and you know, there's Eric's stuff. and there's all these layers upon layers that he's coming on into.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And then just me and my grief. And I had been widowed like 3 months when I started back at this. It was in this 3 months. New grief lasts 5 years. Last Friday, I hit the 5-year mark.
Wow.
It's 2025. So he was here in June of 2020. I was sleeping on the floor where I'd fallen asleep crying the night before. It was bad. I was in a bad place. And he just kept showing up and doing the hard things, helping me haul all this. I had so much rubble, just an unbelievable amount of rubble. And I'm somebody who tries to save every single thing. So the fact that there was rubble is frustrating to me. There's just an endless amount of rubble to clean up, and my family helped, but Jordan was just totally instrumental in helping me finish that project and just being there for me, listening and getting to know Eric. And kind of through him, I realized that other people might be interested in knowing Eric too.
I think this is what's so beautiful about your book is, on the one hand, you give us a very full, alive experience of Eric, and you give us an experience of you are so paralyzed by grief that you can't do anything but, we mentioned stairwell. I scream in the stairwell, like where you just go into the stairwell and just scream. Oh, yeah. And at the same time, you're putting these things back together. And so, that you're at this place where people are like, how did you get here? How did you even do it? And you really show people in a very real way. What are you hoping? So this book, you're thinking this book is coming out this year sometime now, right? Like it's getting there.
I hope so, or early next. I can't imagine it would be much beyond that unless something crazy happens.
So what is you've had these big hopes and dreams for this book. You've already mentioned that you want people to get to know Eric, but what else? What else do we not know about this book? Like, this book is your baby.
It is. It is. I love it. I'm proud of it, and I have high hopes for it. And one of those hopes is that it's a very honest account of grief in my situation, and that it may help others who've gone through any type of a loss, whether it's something similar or not, just know the exhaustion is normal. That not knowing what the heck to do next is normal. The staircase taking 3 years to finish is normal, or at least it was with me. The things not being linear is normal. The going along really well and then having a really bad day is normal. And it's messy. It's just very messy, but that doesn't mean there aren't beautiful things along the way or from before. People tend to, with grief, say you haven't moved on. I still get that from some people. You haven't moved on. Why? Because I still talk about Eric. If they're waiting for that day, I'm never going to move on by their definition. And there's a wonderful writer and speaker named Nora McInerney who talks about the moving on versus moving forward. I've moved forward in a million ways. And just the idea that I have to completely let go of everything that I was and had and loved in order to be a healthy, happy person in my future, I think that idea is crazy. And my love of the past might make me more sympathetic to the holding on to bits of the past than most. But, historical preservation is something different than other people think it is too. They think it means I'm stuck in the past. It's like, no, it's about seeing what's good about the past and looking forward to like the future and thinking about how to be sustainable, thinking about what was beautiful about the past that might be beautiful in the present or the future.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for sharing this. I'm really excited for this book to come out. And do we have a name? I mean, we have a name. Do we have a subtitle? Do we?
Yes, I think I do. I think it's going to be Salvaged, A Reclaimed Life.
You heard it here first, and I did too. I love that subtitle. Thank you so much, Nikki. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your time and talking about my baby.
Thanks for listening to Courageous Wordsmith. Today's episode featured Nikki Kindred Halverson. You can read more about her in the show notes. That's where you'll find my links too. Backstage at Courageous Wordsmith, our production team is the brilliant Brooke Roy and me, Amy Hallberg. You can subscribe to this podcast right on this page. Sign up for my emails and share with friends who want to write. And how about you? You have stories to tell. What if you let yourself tell them? What would that look like for you? I am Amy Hallberg, and until we meet again, travel safely.